The Metroid franchise is one of Nintendo's most enduring and influential sagas, a journey through isolation, discovery, and mystery that has inspired players for nearly 4 decades. This video series is my attempt to trace that mystery from its very beginning, to tell the story of the Metroid universe as clearly and faithfully as possible. Each chapter explores a different era, weaving together the game's official lore and supplemental material into one continuous narrative. By the end, you'll have a complete understanding of the events, worlds, and characters that define Metroid's universe. From time to time, you'll see additional information appear on screen, short trivia notes or context meant to enrich the experience without interrupting the flow. Everything you see and hear is accompanied by its source in the top right corner. The narration, however, remains the core of the story. This series can be enjoyed even as an audiobook or podcast without losing any essential information. Metroid loves to confuse with multiple calendar and cycle systems across different planets and regions, making it impossible to determine the exact years in which each game takes place. Where dates are known, I've included them, but they are meant as extra flavor rather than precise historical markers. The overall order of events is, for the most part, very clear, and when details do conflict, I have chosen the most coherent path, one that respects both canon and the creative intent behind it. Above all, this project is a celebration of the series, its creators, and the many fans who have kept its spirit alive through art, music, and storytelling. To complement official material, you'll also see and hear wonderful creations from the community, all made out of admiration for Metroid's legacy. Whether you followed Samus' journey since the beginning or you're discovering her story for the first time, I hope this series offers something meaningful to every fan of Metroid. And before we continue, a small note. I apologize in advance for any mispronunciations, especially of Metroid-related terms. Luminoth names are special. With that said, let us begin our journey through the Metroid universe. Our story starts at the dawn of galactic history, with the first great civilization to shape the stars, the ancient and enigmatic race known as the Chozo. On an unknown planet somewhere in the universe, a bird-like humanoid species existed. One whose incomparable knowledge and great strength would profoundly influence all life in the cosmos. They were a rather peaceful race, considering all forms of nature sacred and watching over them with great respect. The species called themselves the Chozo. At least 1,500 years before the birth of the first humans, the young Chozo civilization flourished. Originally a proud and warlike race with highly advanced technology, they eventually shifted their focus to prioritize exploration and the pursuit of knowledge in all its forms. A new life of harmony and peace ensued, and the Chozo were eager to share their knowledge and wisdom with the universe. First contact with foreign civilizations, such as the Illa, Incren, Reptilicus, and the Luminoth, was quickly established. The Chozo shared wisdom and technology with these new allies, beginning to colonize new worlds. Through these alliances, the universe benefited from long-lasting peace. The Chozo did not focus solely on the present. Over time, some gained impressive abilities, including clairvoyance, the gift of seeing into the future. These prophets warned of dangers hidden deep within the vastness of the cosmos, prompting the curious race to explore the unknown regions further. Elysia, a giant gas planet, became one of the Chozo's first colonies. The avian civilization built a floating city above the clouds, complete with a massive observatory, and harnessed the planet's endless devastating storms to power their home and machinery. 5 decades passed, and the Chozo realized that the facility required increasing maintenance. Recognizing the need for assistance, they built the Elysians, a mechanical race endowed with self-awareness, to support them in their cosmic explorations. With the Elysians' help, the Chozo launched satellites to the far corners of the galaxy, collecting and analyzing data on life across the universe for many generations. However, the storms on Elysia grew stronger and more dangerous, forcing the Chozo to abandon their heavenly city in the near future. Then, new data reached Skytown from a once thought lost satellite in a dark corner of space. The data was alarming. A gigantic life form emitting immense, deadly radiation, unlike anything the Chozo had ever encountered. An even greater concern arose. Although the satellite couldn't pinpoint the source's exact location, it confirmed that the life form was, in fact, a living blue planet. The Chozo knew they had to contain this potential danger, but its exact location was unknown, too far for the Chozo to reach through conventional space travel. They continued gathering data about the cosmos for centuries, until the year 400 in the Elysian Reckoning, when the time came for the Chozo to depart. They entrusted their loyal mechanical servants with one final task: to continue exploring the skies and gather information about the dangerous blue planet. For the next 200 years, the Elysians eagerly launched satellites and analyzed data. However, the storms on Elysia grew too intense, forcing them into hibernation to preserve the little energy they had left. While they slumbered, the station continued to collect data and upload it to the Elysians, enabling them to analyze it in their dreams. With the Chozo gone and the Elysians inactive, Elysia and the city in the sky were left to fade into obscurity. The Chozo inspired and captivated many other cultures and civilizations, one of which was the Luminoth. Moth-like bipeds, they were capable of rivaling the advanced technology and intelligence of the Chozo allies. Yet, they lacked something very important. Unlike the various races they had encountered before, the Luminoth had no world to call home. The Starborn race had roamed the cosmos for countless cycles in search of a planet to inhabit, but all their efforts had been in vain. Despair spread among the Luminoth, and a nomadic life seemed their only option. That was when Ixquar, a female Luminoth scout, returned with an incredible discovery. A distant world unlike any other, a planet teeming with beauty and life. The moment the Luminoth arrived on this blessed world, it marked the beginning of a new golden age. From that day forth, the Luminoth were of Aether, and Ixquar became the first Sentinel. Planet Aether welcomed the Luminoth with open arms. The native creatures were gentle compared to those of other worlds, and the oceans and fields were bountiful. The Sentinel and her people first settled in the mountain region, surrounded by fresh air and a breathtaking view. In the distance, regions beckoned to be explored. The verdant forests of Torvus and the fertile plains of Agon, which would eventually be colonized as well. Meanwhile, the Luminoth Bitter founded an architectural wonder in the mountain region, a sacred fortress, a place of knowledge for future generations. But they didn't stop there. A grand temple, a monument to their accomplishments, was built between the mountains Torvus and Agon, a symbol of peace. It was truly a time of harmony for the Luminoth. But Aether, as perfect as it seemed, had a fatal flaw. Aether was a rogue planet, without the sun to orbit and draw energy from. The planet's energy supply gradually began to dwindle and would eventually expire if left unchecked. To save their new homeworld, the greatest minds of the Luminoth developed the energy controllers, devices designed to regulate and distribute Aether's energy across the planet. The main energy controller was built in the Great Temple, with 3 additional sub-controllers placed in the temples of Agon, Torvus and the Sanctuary Fortress. Together, they collected and radiated energy over the world to sustain life. This so-called Light of Aether protected all life on the planet and ushered in an era of prosperity, safeguarded by the new Sentinel Qsis, the first sentinel born on Aether. The Luminoth race had finally found their place in the cosmos. Meanwhile, on planet Brio, the Reptilicus civilization slowly paved the way for its own downfall. After Brios I liberated the race and started the Golden Age, the Reptilicus began to focus on the stars. Soon after, the first spaceships departed, marking the start of a new era focused on science and exploration. The Reptilicus befriended the Chozo and Luminoth, exchanging knowledge and wisdom with them. The Lords of Science, a faction of the Reptilicus, embraced this star-born knowledge and were determined to lead Brio and its people to even greater heights of knowledge and technology. However, not everyone on Brio was keen on this sudden shift in culture. The Chozo warned them to seek balance between old and new, magic and science, blood and fuel. These warnings were ignored by the Lords of Science. They forged ahead, blind to the growing anger in the hearts of the Primals. Eventually, the time came when Sphimas, the very first Lord of Science, denounced the Primals and their ancient traditions. It was then that the Age of Science ended and the Age of Schism began. A civil war with no hope for resolution. At first, the conflicts were small and easily overlooked, but they grew slow and steady. Diplomacy gave way to brutality and anger, and war came to Brio. The once peaceful Lords of Science used their knowledge to unleash death and destruction upon the Primals. In retaliation, the Primals turned to the darkest of ancient powers, cursing all who served science and technology. The Chosen Luminoth, once brethren to the Reptilicus, tried to intervene, but it was too late. They were mere spectators, watching as rage, hatred and war consumed the once peaceful Brio. Calamity after calamity visited Brio and its people. The brutal conflict between the two factions devastated what was once a beautiful utopia. The Lords of Science realized, far too late, that they were to blame for this catastrophe. They regretted ignoring the warnings of their friends, the mourning of the Primals, their own people. By blindly following the path of science, they had paved the way to their doom. The war robbed the Lords of Science of precious resources needed to fuel their war machines, such as the Mogonars. Without these powerful titans, the Primals were able to overrun the helpless Lords. The few remaining Lords fled to the uninhabitable regions of Brio, areas that the Primals and all other life on the planet avoided. The Primals had won the war, yet they were no victors. Brio was dying, and with it, the entire Reptilicus race. While the Primals celebrated, the Lords of Science regrouped in a hidden sanctuary and formulated a new plan. Brio was dying, yes, but the Lords would attempt to save whatever remained of the planet. As the Primals scoured the planet for their remaining enemies, the last Lords of Science used their great minds to build machines and launch them into the heavens. These machines preserved the remaining fertile land of Brio by absorbing toxins and pollution in the air and soil. However, the planet's climate was beyond repair. Brio's rotation had stopped, leaving one side eternally scorched by the sun, while the other side became a frozen wasteland, locked in ice and darkness. Only 4% of Brio's surface remained inhabitable. This was all the Lords could save. Unfortunately for them, the launch of their machines revealed their location to the Primals. The bright lights of science ignited the Primals' hearts with hate and anger. Fearing another attack by the Lords, warriors were dispatched to hunt down the last of them. Empowered by new magic, the now protected Primals were able to navigate the burning wastelands of Brio. The Lords of Science tried to hide, but to no avail. The Primals' final ambush killed the remaining Lords of Science, bringing an end to the civil war that had been fueled by hate and anger. But unbeknownst to the Primals, one Lord of Science survived. Forgotten in exile, this last Lord continued to protect the planet. he adopted both the ways of science and magic, as the Chozo had once urged, to bring life back to the dying part of Brio. He created mighty Mogonars out of stone and discovered a new natural energy source called fuel gel. Eventually, the last lord became a living myth. The primals, meanwhile, slowly slipped into barbarism. With no enemies to hunt, they turned on each other. They devolved into savage predators, losing their connection to magic in the end. The once great Reptilicus civilization was no more. The last lord lived a life of solitude, still focused on preserving Brio. As he grew older and neared his death, he began searching for a successor, someone who would continue his work. Seemingly by chance, the lord found and rescued a young female primal who appeared to be searching for him. This young primal was, in fact, a prophetess who desperately wanted to speak with the last lord about her visions. She shared her dreams of a star-born death that would wipe out all life on Brio, a horror that must be stopped. Based on the prophetess's warning, the last lord began to improve his machines and equipment in preparation for a defense of Brio. But fate had other plans for him. An accident caused his supply of fuel gel to explode, sending fire into the sky and exposing his position to the enemy. It wasn't long before the primals rushed to attack. Without fuel gel to power the mighty Mogonars, the lord had no means to defend himself or the prophetess. Yet there was still a way to save Brio. The lord entrusted all of his recordings to the prophetess, knowing that his time had come to an end. The lords of science were responsible for much of the destruction that had befallen the Reptilicus and Brio. He was ready to accept his death. In a final stand against the primals, the last lord of science bought the prophetess enough time to escape to safety. The prophetess, now alone with her visions and knowledge, and no way to protect Brio, etched the lord's last words and recordings into stone and scattered them across the planet. She hoped, or perhaps even knew, that someone would come and use this knowledge to fight for Brio. The lords of science were no more, and the primals were only a shadow of their former selves. Unable to combat the starborn plague in time, there was no hope left for Brio. Millennia ago, in the distant Tetra Galaxy, the Alimbic race was nearly wiped out by an unknown extraterrestrial invasion. The few survivors swore they would never again feel so helpless and powerless. The Alimbic civilization, one of the oldest in the universe, perhaps even older than the Chozo, focused on military science and the creation of deadly weaponry. Their goal was clear: to never lose a war again by becoming the deadliest and strongest civilization in existence. Though peaceful at heart, the Alimbics defended their territory without mercy. For generations, the Alimbics bolstered their defenses and enhanced their weaponry, creating lethal bioweapons. They also refined their impressive mental abilities, such as telepathy and telekinesis, further augmenting them with science. Even extra-dimensional travel, once thought impossible, became a reality for the mighty Alimbics. The race proved its superiority by winning and ending the Tetra border wars, thanks to the heroic actions of General Almiak. After what felt like an eternity, the Alimbics' fight finally came to an end, and they were able to live in peace. The restored peace allowed the Alimbics to return to their philosophical pursuits. Without any enemies to fear, however, the Alimbic people grew somewhat arrogant. They believed that nothing in the universe could challenge them. Then, it appeared above their homeworld. An unidentified object that crashed onto the planet, releasing a strange gas. This vapor was capable of shifting and reconstructing itself, even taking the form of an Alimbic. This creature, far beyond anything the Alimbics had ever fought, was impervious to their advanced weaponry, Even worse, it could absorb energy, including the very life force of the Alimbics. This sky-fallen horror unleashed a wave of annihilation upon the Alimbic world, and its name was Gorilla. Gorilla's arrival marked the beginning of the Alimbic War, the final conflict the Tetra Galaxy would witness. The Alimbics were utterly overrun by this extraterrestrial force. History had repeated itself. Gorilla was indestructible, and it was clear that the Alimbics were doomed. But surrender was not an option. They knew that Gorilla wouldn't stop with their destruction. It would continue until the entire universe was consumed. The Alimbics understood that the only way to protect the universe was to seal Gorilla away, as killing it was impossible. The Alimbic Order of Elders, founded by General Almiak, created the Seal Sphere, a prison capable of containing Gorilla and its psychic powers. Once Gorilla was lured into the trap, the prison was placed aboard the Oubliette, a ship designed to keep the creature contained. However, Gorilla's power was immense, and the Alimbics knew there was no room for error. They used the Alimbic cannon to open a rift to the infinite void, a dimension of absolute nothingness, and sent the Oubliette on a one-way course into the void. A prison befitting a nightmare like Gorilla. While drifting through the endless void, the Oubliette's final task was to analyze the creature's energy in the Seal Sphere, in order to develop a weapon capable of killing Gorilla, should it ever regain the strength to escape. To ensure that Gorilla could never escape, the Alimbics deactivated the Alimbic cannon and hid its 8 energy sources, the Octolyphs. The 8 elders of the Alimbic Order sacrificed their very essence, transferring it into the Octolyphs. The remaining citizens followed suit, transferring their essences into the Seal Sphere as well. This mental barrier would serve as the final precaution. The Alimbics, in an act of ultimate sacrifice, imprisoned themselves with Gorilla to protect the universe. Just like that, the once proud and almighty Alimbic race disappeared from the known universe. Many years, decades, and perhaps even centuries passed since the events on Elysia. Like their allies, the Chozo were surrounded by darkness and the inevitable approach of death. Their focus on exploring and protecting the universe made them blind to their own end. With incomparable knowledge and technology, they extended their lives for many decades, but the cost was steep. The Chozo eventually lost the ability to reproduce. One day, they would simply cease to exist. Over time, most Chozo sought a life away from war and violence. They were busy establishing numerous tribes and colonies, spreading across the cosmos. While at least one tribe maintained their warrior traditions, the rest of the Chozo embraced peaceful, pacifistic lives, dedicated to protecting life. Despite their efforts, the prophets continued to perceive dangers. Death seemed inevitable, and there was nothing the Chozo could do to change it. One tribe retreated to the world of Talon 4, isolated from the universe's problems. They favored nature instead of machines, just as their civilization once used to. The Chozo on Talon 4 acquired unique abilities through their focus on the spirit and mind, enabling them to see beyond ordinary perception. This distant sight revealed visions of past and future events, as if the universe was finally communicating with them. Yet many of these visions were dark. The most feared prophecy foretold the arrival of the Worm, a parasitic creature nurtured in poison that would devour everything on Talon 4. Unbeknownst to them, this prophecy was soon to become reality. A mysterious meteor struck Talon 4, releasing a strange, poisonous gas that infected the planet's ecosystem. This aggressive energy seemed to have a will of its own. Fascinated and terrified, the Chozo watched as the nightmare began to spread across their lands. Nothing was spared by the poison. Once peaceful creatures perished or mutated into terrifying beasts, attacking any life nearby, including the Chozo. Water turned foul, oozing death. Even planets and trees mutated into deadly predators. Watching Talon 4 suffer, the Chozo focused all their efforts to combat this poison. There was no prophecy of victory, no guiding vision. Yet the Chozo were determined to protect their sacred home. The Chozo built a massive temple above the impact crater, the source of the evil energy. They hoped to contain the poison and save Talon 4. The Cipher, a powerful Chozo seal, locked the crater with 12 charged artifacts. The Chozo gave what little energy they had left to power the seal, trapping the poison beneath the surface of Talon 4. But life on the planet was already doomed. The battle against the Calamity poisoned the Chozo as well. The Chozo died and their forms mutated, just like all other life on the planet. They became Chozo ghosts, trapped in purgatory, doomed to never find peace. Though their bodies were gone, their will to protect their land remained, a testament to their iron will. The remaining Chozo believed the poison could still be defeated, perhaps not by their hands, but by someone else. To aid this entrusted one, the Chozo stored their ancient weaponry across the planet, hoping it would be found. They feared that sinister beings might stumble upon the poison, seeking to use it as a weapon, potentially a greater threat than the poison itself. The cipher was designed to protect against all who would attempt to misuse the poison. The Chozo spread the 12 artifacts across Talon 4, hiding them from prying eyes. The Chozo ghosts watched over these artifacts, understanding their importance. The Chozo accepted their fate. The darkness inside the crater grew stronger with every passing moment. The Chozo focused all their will on the cipher, hoping it would hold off the poison until the entrusted one arrived. Their determination to fight evil transcended physical form. The Chozo continued to guard the temple from beyond space and time, awaiting the arrival of the true and trusted one. Surrounded by darkness and despair, the Chozo sages received a prophecy of hope. A vision of light pierced the darkness. This light would liberate Talon 4 and destroy the great poison. It came in the form of a female warrior, a hunter who would enter the crater and eliminate the deadly worm inside, a heroine who would fight in the name of the Chozo. The Luminoth, meanwhile, thrived in the peace of their utopia, Aether. The female Vemos was chosen as a successor to the second Sentinel, Cusis, and led their people for many decades as the third Sentinel. The fertile fields of Agon and the beautiful forests of Torvus flourished throughout the Golden Age. The brightest minds on the planet gathered at the great sanctuary in the mountains, developed advanced machinery. The Luminoth were blessed with wisdom and knowledge, while their precious Light of Aether continued to protect them. But slowly, a shadow began to fall over their future. Tragically, Vemos died during childbirth. The mourning Luminoth bid farewell to their third Sentinel and welcomed her son, Eumos. Jade Jink succeeded Vemos and became the fourth Sentinel, ready to maintain peace and prosperity on Aether. However, it was during his leadership that the Luminoth detected a strange stellar object, seemingly heading directly for the planet. Despite their best efforts to destroy the meteor with weapons powered by the Light of Aether, they failed. Their attempts were in vain. Jade Jink reinforced the defensive shielding around their dwellings and sought shelter with his people. On that day, the Golden Age ended, and the Luminoth spent their final hours of peace, awaiting the unknown. The sinister meteor struck Aether with unimaginable force. The Luminoth braced for the planet to shatter, but it held firm. The devastation, however, was catastrophic. The once lush plains of Agon were scorched beyond recognition, and the forests of Torvus were swallowed by the encroaching sea. Darkness spread relentlessly across the land. The helpless Luminoth emerged from their shelters, only to be greeted by terror. Their paradise had become a nightmare. Half of the Light of Aether mysteriously vanished, leaving the planet in an unstable state. Even more puzzling was the fact that the meteor itself had disappeared. As the Luminoth began to rebuild and salvage what they could, they encountered unsettling anomalies. Several objects on the planet were caught in a state of dimensional flux, as if torn between Aether and some other realm. Dimensional rifts began to open, unleashing swarms of dark energy upon Aether. These creatures consumed every life form in their path, transforming them into grotesque and sinister versions of their former selves. The Luminoth dubbed these twisted beings Darklings, and with their arrival, war was brought to Aether. Conflict became unavoidable. The Luminoth analyzed the anomalies and developed machines capable of opening rifts into the dark world. Scouts who ventured to the other side reported a twisted, poisonous world, Dark Aether, a warped reflection of their own. There, they found the missing half of Aether's planetary energy, guarded by the dominant inhabitants of this dark realm, the Ing. The Luminoth named them Ing, meaning terror, for their aggressive nature and unique abilities, including the power to forcibly possess living creatures. Born in this dark dimension and unable to endure light, the Ing used the wildlife to invade Aether, waging war on the Luminoth. Battles on Dark Aether were impossible for the Luminoth due to its toxic atmosphere. Eventually, they crafted special crystals powered by the Light of Aether, which enabled them to fight the oppressive darkness. This technology allowed the Luminoth to explore Dark Aether and wage war on the Ing, striving to restore balance to their home. The brilliant minds at the Sanctuary Fortress managed to weaponize the dark energy used by the Ing, hoping that turning it against them would overload the creatures and destroy them. However, the Dark Beam proved ineffective. Fighting fire with fire was futile. The Luminoth needed a different approach: light. The newly developed Light Beam proved to be a successful counter, obliterating the Ing with brutal efficiency. The enemy was not only formidable, but also highly devious. The Ing began to possess the Luminoth, turning beloved friends and family members into merciless foes, spilling Luminoth blood across the land. The courageous Luminoth warriors were prepared to self-destruct to prevent further corruption, but they were slowly losing the war. The Luminoth were not equipped to fight a prolonged battle of this scale. The Ing vastly outnumbered them. But there was another way to win. Dark Aether relied on half of Aether's planetary energy to survive. If this energy were successfully returned to the light world, the dark dimension would collapse and the Ing would be no more. Over the next few years, the energy transfer module was developed, a machine capable of storing and transporting vast amounts of Aether's light energy. Meanwhile, Luminoth forces on Dark Aether discovered the Sky Temple, a twisted replica of their sacred temple, holding the Dark World's planetary energy. The Sky Temple was guarded by a massive gate that required 10 keys to open. Luminoth intelligence confirmed that these keys were scattered across Dark Aether. Everything depended on retrieving the keys and securing the planetary energy. With this knowledge, the most powerful Luminoth warriors were assembled for the most critical mission. 10 brave soldiers, led by the valiant Aecool, the female champion of the Luminoth, were dispatched to Dark Aether in search of the keys. Equipped with the finest armor and weaponry, as well as the energy transfer module, they were the Luminoth's last hope. The remaining forces would continue their struggle against the Ing, allowing Aecool and her team to complete their critical mission. But none of them ever returned. The Luminoth searched in desperation, but all efforts were in vain. The 10 key bearers and Aecool had failed, and the energy transfer module was lost. The Luminoth began work on a second transfer module, holding on to their plan, but time was running out. The Ing's counterattack was imminent and would be catastrophic. A massive Ing assault took the Aegon region by surprise. The temple and its guardian, Aisha, were overwhelmed, with no hope of salvation. The Luminoth lost control of Aegon to the Ing. But even worse, Aegon's planetary energy suddenly disappeared. Aether took a devastating blow, and the Luminoth realized the full extent of their mistake. The Ing had recovered the energy transfer module from Akul's team and used it against the Luminoth. Their target was no longer the Luminoth race. They sought to destroy Aether, and the Luminoth had unwittingly provided them with the weapon to do so. The Ing turned their attention to Taurus next, laying siege to the region and its temple in an unrelenting assault. The Luminoth, under the command of Guardian Awok, fought valiantly to repel the invaders, but they were overwhelmed by the sheer strength of the Ing army. Only 3 cycles after the fall of Aegon, Taurus and its planetary energy were seized by the Ing. There was nothing more the Luminoth could do. Hope for survival was all but extinguished. Aether was dying, its precious light being siphoned away to fuel the growing darkness. The war had entered its final phase, and the Luminoth faced certain destruction. The Ing controlled 75% of Aether's planetary energy and had slain most of the Luminoth's mightiest warriors, including Jae Jink, the 4th Sentinel. The new 5th Sentinel, Umos, son of Vemos, gathered the remaining forces at the Sanctuary Fortress to protect its planetary energy. With no time to develop a second energy transfer module, the Luminoth saw no chance of victory. It was only a matter of time before the Ing would ambush the Sanctuary, steal the energy, and wipe out the last of the Luminoth. Aether would die, and with it, the Luminoth race. There was no hope left. Interdimensional wrath, deadly poison, and political war obliterated most of the now forgotten civilizations. The Alimbics lost their flesh, the Reptilicus their minds. The Luminoth faced a battle without hope, while the Chozo and Talon 4 suffered a living death. Throughout all these events, the Chozo were busy establishing numerous tribes and colonies, spreading across the cosmos. Where at least one tribe maintained their warrior traditions, the rest of the Chozo embraced peaceful, pacifistic lives. Old age would soon wipe out the once mighty race, but some tribes still endured. One such peaceful tribe, the Toa, crash-landed on a small planet named Zebes. They quickly made the unknown world their new home and watched the stars with caution. Once the great protectors of the universe, the declining Chozo had become mere spectators. Younger civilizations began to explore the cosmos, and soon foreign satellites would appear. New cultures would rise, and the old Chozo would fade into the past. Long ago, sages had foreseen their own demise, yet speaking of hope and light. A hunter, cloaked in orange, red and green. A heroine, alone in the darkness of the universe, willing to stand for the light. The Chozo saw how this hunter would liberate planets, prevent wars, and eradicate the plague. They saw the universe's only hope, the one who could end the dark prophecies. And they saw that this hunter would be one of their own.